Based on last week's video, maybe we can introduce ourselves a little bit so that way our audience knows who we are.
You go ahead.
Okay. So, as you all know, my name is Joanna Dos Santos. I am a licensed professional counselor as well as a life coach. And I have been in practice for a few years now with my beautiful colleague, Brian Nandy, who is also a licensed professional counselor and a life coach and a psychoanalyst. And how many years in practice have you been?
Well, technically, I've been doing this since for about 23 years, but as a license, before that I was in my, undergraduate and all that. But since license, I think I've been doing this for about 15 years now. 15, 16 years now. Yeah.
And we have experiences. We both have experiences of working as crisis counselors in emergency rooms. So we have dealt with some cases in the past.
Yes.
And we are here to really to talk about some of our own cases or some of our experiences, and also with what's going on in the world today, in the world what has been going on, what will be going on, and how we all deal with particular, how we deal with situations as individuals.
Yeah.
Right. And we have a particular topic in mind today.
Yes, and the topic is, during this COVID-19, and how do we transition from quarantine into the workforce and for kids back to school. The feelings that come up in that transitional period, right? From an analytical perspective, right? When we think about our upbringing and how we venture out into the world, there is, first we start with a place of feeling insecure because we don't know what we are capable and what our capacity is. And then it moves to insecure individuation, where we know that we have some of what we do need and we are ready to individuate and go out into the world, but it still feels insecure because we're not sure yet, or we don't have the information or data or evidence to presume that what we have, character strength, in our experiences, in our ability to our intuition to know that, is it true that what I have has the capacity to protect me out in this new world? Right. So it still feels insecure. And then with the experience of being out there in the exposure in the environment and how we utilize our coping skills, then it moves to a secure individuation, where now I feel safe, and now I can ground myself and I can grow.
And I think a lot of it has to do with, it had to do with it, and I think it continues to do with it, with anxiety, right? The fear of not knowing how we transition. So how do we find comfort in transitioning? How do we find safety in transitioning? And I'm speaking for myself because I know obviously my daughter is going to be returning to all remote school. So I have strong feelings about that, because how will I juggle now the full-time job, the ability to continue with my clients while at the same time making sure that she's 6 years old, so that she gets the proper education, that I don't fall behind as a parent, because now not only am I a parent, but I am a professional that needs to be there for my clients. But at the same time, now I feel like there's a new role coming in, which is the teacher's role. So even though she is remotely being schooled, I have to now find a balance. And I think that's an important factor in transitioning too, is finding a balance. How will we make this work? And I'm sure we've all been there, and we will continue on being there. There will be anxiety, and there will be good days. There will be bad days. I'm sure there's going to be days where she doesn't want to do work, and, how will I fall into this? Will I just say that's fine, that's okay, or provide her with a safety space where she can do some and maybe not all? I don't know. So I think once again, the part of transitioning is also figuring out where it will lead us. We're also talking about transitioning back to work. There's still many parents, we know this, right, based on the profession, I think, that are working remotely because their jobs, feel companies' jobs are letting them know that it's okay to work remotely as long as they do their jobs. I think we can say the same thing for ourselves, but I think also with our profession, because of the psychoanalytical background, it's so important also to have an actual physical presence. Mm-hmm. So we are now in the process of moving into our offices to see if we feel comfortable having our clients in sessions, our own protocols. What is it that we do? What do we feel safe with? Masks on, masks off, right?
Yeah. So let's start with like maybe the kids, right? And also as professionals, and those three roles. I mean, prior to this, the part of the complaint for those who worked at home as parents is that there is no transitional space, like the drive from work to home or from home to work.
Right.
For some of those thoughts.
It's really either a kitchen or a living room or a bedroom.
And the transition period is too short, or there really isn't one. You're just crossing a barrier, really. And there's space for an emotional change. It's the same for children as well. Home is school, and so there's no interaction or change of an environment. It is a mindset that has to transition. Versus our environment.
And now we all have to do this, right? As parents, as kids.
Right.
So we have to deal with a lot of different emotions.
Yeah, and in the meditation world, or even just, some of the techniques from there, it's like, how can I give my brain or my psychology a 10-minute break, between leaving the office and leaving and entering the next space? Just closing my eye, just listening to an app as a way to end the day, to enter. And then I guess a conversation with children too. What will the structure while they school from home look like? So that they have an idea of what it's going to entail. Breaks in between, emotion management. I mean, like as a parent, the teaching aside and understanding what are we teaching our kids and do we know how to teach them? Because, math, for instance, is a whole new way of learning. Very different from my time.
I don't think there's necessarily a conclusion as to what exactly works, right? When it comes to transitioning. But I think going back to like how we introduced the session today is how we all grow up, how we were raised, what felt good, what didn't feel good, and how we can apply some of these things with the current transitioning.
Do you think playtime will be helpful in between classes?
I'm sorry, say that again?
Do you think play, like a little break or recess in between classes or in between, 2 or 3 classes?
Right. So that's interesting. I think it really varies by age. I truly believe that the kindergarten on stage, probably to about maybe 10, 11, depending on a child, because if there's a child with, and I'm thinking about special needs, I think there is a lot more that comes into play with this. I think your computer stopped working. We're just going to pause for a little bit until Brian comes back.
From where I'm seeing you.
Our computer froze for a little bit, so.
No, you were paused in a very.
Can
you hear me?
I can. Yes, the internet was a little bit unstable. We all have to deal with this. Yes, I hear you. Can you hear me?
Another transitional experience, mini transition.
Yes, this is the beauty of it. Can you hear us? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can see you. Yeah. Now we're back to normal.
Can you hear me? Okay. Once again, we're talking about transitioning, right? Of what we have to deal with. And are we okay with this? Is someone hearing us? And are we going to get frustrated? Listen, we have to be real and we're human. There's frustrations everywhere.
Yeah.
Going back to like some of these questions, what works? I think as a parent, I think as a professional is that there's almost like a difficult stage in every stage. But I think the kids from kindergarten, maybe I'm maybe I'm judging the statement too quick, from kindergarten to approximately maybe 10, 11 years old, I think kids need to be supervised. That also comes with those children who might need additional assistance. I think there's a lot of challenges that come into play with that, and how we, once again, as parents, as educators, can manage this, can help out. Do we have to quit our jobs? Do we have to put that aside? So I think there's just a lot of questions that are unanswered. Certain children are very good with doing the classes and being able to transition from one class to another. Talking about play, I know back in April, May, when it came to doing schoolwork with my then she was 6 years old, is it was so important to do something in between her homework assignments or the things that she needed to complete it. Now, once again, it's all about balancing. Can I do this? Well, will I fit it? Right. So if her homework assignments, her schoolwork took her approximately good, let's say 30 minutes. Okay, let's do something else for 15, 20 minutes. That's exciting. Because kids can get bored easily. We can get bored easily. So I think play, or at least some form of a distraction in between the schoolwork, is important. Obviously, we're not going to be sitting here and saying, let's do schoolwork from 9 a.m. to 8 o'clock at night with distractions in between. I think we also have to allow that transition to make sense for us and also for our kids. I mean, there's kids out there too who are taking care of their younger siblings. So there's another part to this transitioning, right? When will they complete their schoolwork? How will they manage the classes while at the same time taking care of their younger siblings because their parents have to work? So there's just a lot of stuff that comes into display when we talk about transitioning for parents and children, I think.
Absolutely. I just had a memory when I was a kid, right? And there was a time on Saturdays, we had routine. We had school in Malaysia, but there was sometimes a lot of our routine on Saturdays was to do a lot of our homework. And there was a period in time where our homework so interesting. I only remember this now as we're talking, where we would do handstands in between sessions, in between homework. And I can remember I think it was my mom. And then after that, we had an uncle who was visiting, and then he enforced that in a sense. Okay, we're done with this. Remember, we're supposed to do handstands.
Mm-hmm.
We all would line up and get against the wall, and we would do handstands in between. Handstand against a wall, though,
Yes.
in between between homework. And so we to say, how long, like a little timing, okay, let's we learn to time ourselves. And we were simply counting, not like we had a stopwatch or whatever, but to how many, the numbers, like 1
seconds, right?
How
we
many
can stand, yes,
a second or whatever that we could like last.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember that happening when we were children, and I used to live by the ocean, and on the weekends my dad would take us out swimming, and how long could we stay underwater as a way to expand our ability to to swim without coming up. And I think that and chores, how my parents made it like fun, like sweeping. Okay, let's all sweep and all that.
Yes.
And there's something to be said about some of those routines that became life skills, but at that time was play.
Oh yes.
But they embedded that and made it sound like as if it was fun. I don't know if that could happen. It depends. Times are very different now than before. Because now I think you've got to contend with the telephone or the iPad or whatever the screen time is. Well, if I want to negotiate, can I use screen time then? Is my break?
Right. So right. Nowadays, we can all agree that we are all in front of our computers, telephones, televisions, right? So that kind of takes over from the actual play in the yard. And I think once again, this part of transitioning for kids, and I feel like I hear two different sides. I hear children who, and maybe this is where the structure comes in and the importance of having some form of a structure, because I hear children, more so teenagers, who feel good about all remote school. Children who have fear of public speaking, social phobias, because this is almost this is where kind of like a barrier comes in for them, where they feel comfortable with the Zoom or the WebEx, whatever it is that the school is using, and their anxiety is not as heightened. And then, of course, I have the other sides of stories with kids who are expressing that they don't like the whole idea of remote school. Why? Because they cannot interact socially, communicate with their friends. I mean, like now we're talking about school and how kids are, and I guess a very school by school, state by state, where classes, they have their, I don't know, hour-long classes. And then typically in a school, a kid comes out of the class, they have 3 whatever minutes to change in between the classes. Now they don't have that. So those 2-3 minutes to interact and socialize, to talk about things that, typical teenager would talk about, or a kid, they kind of can't do that. So now they probably are doing it via text or whatever it is, or maybe silly little comments in between their Zoom classes, but they don't have that social interactions. So once again, there's 2 sides to transitioning: the enjoyment of the transitioning and being able to maybe have less of anxiety, and then the other side of anxiety, frustrations because of lack of social interaction with friends.
So interesting. I suddenly think about like when we have seminars and we have like energizers in between, like can part of the class before it comes to a close be used for a quick, energetic closing, or can it be a mindful 5 deep breath closing? That we prepared to close the session or to close the class. And I wonder if we can use scheduling as a way to block, for adults, it would be, I'm only going to check my email twice a day. And it's not the first thing that I'll check. I'll do some work, and maybe 2 hours into work is when I'll check my messages. So as at least get some work done. And then, and also close the day or whenever they have got to get out of their room. And I wonder if this could be a way to incorporate like mindfulness into the practice, like in between homework and for adults, like on the hour to take 5 deep breaths.
This is actually so interesting because I have heard, I don't know which schools, but I heard that some schools are actually incorporating meditation in between. I hope this is something that can be used in probably, I'm going to say as a practitioner, I think, but also as a parent, as a human being, I think it's important. So to have some form of meditation, even guided meditation. I even remember this from high school. I don't know what grade I was, but I remember I had a teacher in high school who used guided meditation in one of our classes. And I would say now, if I'm looking back, it felt long. Probably maybe I don't think it was, but it felt long. I'd say maybe good 10 minutes. And it was so good because we're able to really separate, right, from these daily activities, responsibilities, and let's be realistic. Who loves doing chores? Who loves always needing to do things, right? I mean, we're exposed to things that we like to do and we don't like to do, and we have to do them both. So I think that's part of having some form of meditation, deep breathing. By age, I think that also varies too. A 6-year-old may not necessarily want to do deep breathing, so they might need to be a little bit.
I heard something in the kindergarten where, sorry to interrupt, where they say, breathe in the flowers, breathe out the fire.
Yes. Breathe in the rain.
Breathe out the fire. I thought that was so cute. And also relate to it. It kind of touches our inner child, the playful part.
It does. It does.